Abstergo.
After the colossal disappointment of Unity the year before, the devs at Ubisoft Quebec had their work cut out for them. Assassin's Creed Syndicate was a game that was unfortunately cursed by Unity's fate, which lingered around like it was some ghost. Because of this, a lot of people had completely lost interest in checking out this game at launch, with Syndicate probably being one of the most poorly sold games in the franchise. However, now there has been a bit of a revisionist history with the game. 10 years later now, most people think that it's quite underrated and didn't really deserve all the flack it got just because of Unity. But I want to see that is this game really as good as I played it the first time around? Is Assassin's Creed Syndicate really a good game that deserved more? We will find out in this video. So please, before I start this video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe to show your support. It would mean a lot to me. But without further ado, let's jump right back into the period of the Industrial Revolution. We start Assassin's Creed Syndicate with the present day, which is inconsequential and really means nothing to the overarching narrative of the series. But if you like watching assassins in the modern day do cool stuff whilst you're being cucked out, please be my guest. Now that we got that out of the way we are introduced to the city of London is pretty well done. You're introduced to the city in a pretty organic way, and I also really like the cool throwback to the rooftop race in AC2. It sets the scene of what to expect with this city. Industrialization at the rapid pace at the cost of human lives and well-being, which is represented beautifully by the soundtrack composed by Austin Wintory, with beautiful violin arrangements that reveal the beauty and the tragedy of life in Victorian London, with the elegance of the upper echelons of society enjoying the advancements in technology and wealth, but on the other hand, the common class being exploited by them, being replaced by more capable machinery, leaving them unemployed and on the streets, children working miserable conditions. It's crazy that the game's soundtrack does a much better job at portraying the themes of the game than the story itself. London in the game is absolutely mesmerizing. I gotta give it to Ubisoft, they always nail their open worlds. The brick marble buildings stretching across the sky with the smoke in the horizon signaling the start of a new era of machines and industry. The bustling streets and stations of people getting on with their lives. Which I must say, the crowds of people also feel much more immersive than Unity in my opinion. So London is great, but what about traversing through it? Now there's the good and the bad. I think it's better to get the bad out of my chest first. The grappling hook, taken from the Arkham games, to make traversal faster and efficient. See, that is what they want you to think. Yet in reality, the grappling hook strips so much away and offers very little in return. Like climbing buildings is not even a thing anymore in this game, as I can just scale them up no problem with the press of a button. Now, I get that people find that enjoyable, but it removes so much player agency and really automates a lot of the traversal of the game. Not to mention the parkour, which I don't think it needs to be said that this game took away what worked with Unity's system and instead of improving upon it, really just made it worse. Parkour is just much slower and sluggish, and the design of the city doesn't help, with ginormous 10 feet buildings that would take ages to traverse, and how wide the streets are, it's impossible to jump across. Which is why they had no option but to include the grappling hook to make it more palpable to traverse around. And some people might think it's way faster to use the hook, but I'm here to prove you wrong. In fact, this is evident from this one side mission that I was playing that involved me to reach the train before the given time limit. I naturally used the grappling hook to get there faster, and honestly, I just failed the mission, since the train went so darn far while I was busy sliding down buildings. So I just decided to stick with the carriage instead. The addition of this tool discourages parkour so much, it's just sad to think that this game really started the trend of slowly worsening parkour with each title. In many ways, it already started happening before. The only time when parkour is engaging in this game is when you're traversing through the River Thames, as it feels quite a challenge to time your movements right before the boats drown the debris you're supposed to land on, or you just miss the jump completely. You also got to keep up if you're on the boat going the opposite direction so you can reach the next set of debris, so that is why decoupling the boats makes sense, to lose unnecessary momentum. The level design challenges you a bit to traverse the whole river without falling in, and I quite like it. Though it's still nowhere as near to the quality or level of the previous games, at least you're getting to do some parkour traversal somewhere. Another thing that the grappling hook takes away is the chase, the height of the assassin fantasy to outrun the enemy in style. With this tool, it's so easy to shake guards with the press of a simple button, which was part of the fun of the games before, the intensity of the chase while you escape them with stylish parkour moves. AC3 did this best with the guards being genuinely tough to shake, but the fun to cross building windows and losing the enemy that way was so satisfying. And that's all gone with just this mechanic. It also takes away the charm of climbing a viewpoint and synchronizing. Like seriously, what is this mechanic really adding to the game besides being an inconvenience? The good thing about Traversal though are the carriages, more importantly the carriage chases. Since the grappling hook took away the fun of the chase on foot, at least that's not the case here. Carriage chases are pretty fun and chaotic, and they offer a new and unique gameplay experience. Jumping over carriages, shooting down and ramming your pursuers, and the best part for me was doing the Tokyo drifts across the narrow lanes of London. They certainly give you that GTA-like experience where you can run over or knock anything down, and I know it's a bit immersion breaking and not really in character for an assassin to do this, but I'm willing to overlook this one just because I found it so fun to drive around carriages across the packed streets of London. Carriage races are also there in the game to test your driving skills, and it's also pretty fun. It reminds me of Mario Kart in a way, where you're getting your competitors off the road by ramming them to continue on, and it's a challenge to get the number 1 spot. Another defining feature of this game is the combat. I do appreciate that they wanted to do something different instead of a counter parry skill system. There is still some remnants of that system in this game with a lot of elements changed. The combat in Syndicate is more like a brawl with the sounds of knuckles, hard-hit punches and gritty takedowns. Gone are the days when you could use swords, axes and spears. Now we have more elegant and discreet weaponry like the bare hand knuckles, a cane and a cookery knife. Now I know people think that it's a shame that we can't use the weapons we had before, but honestly it's really fitting not just for the setting but as an assassin. It does make sense to use weapons that are more discreet and less out there, so they don't draw much attention to themselves. I used to hate this combat system when I first played, but honestly, I kinda dig it now. I like that I can mix my fighting combo with different weapons like the gun or the knife with a quick press of a button. The takedowns also look the most brutal that I've seen in an AC game. Personally, this execution takedown is my favorite from the game, and I feel like a badass every time I pull off one. My main criticism with this combat system, however, is that there really aren't different ways to beat different enemies like it was in the previous games. You basically just mash the button until you've got the enemy health low enough to perform a finisher. Sure, there are points where you're supposed to break the enemy's defense and all, but it's so simple to do that it adds no complexity whatsoever. Which is such a shame because this brawler style combat system lends itself perfectly to different styles of play. Which is why you can find yourself pretty bored to interact with this after you've got to grips with the basic system. The only cool thing that you can do is this cool duo finisher. This happens when you get 2 enemies' health low enough so that they are stunned and the game plays this sick animation. And it's not as easy as it looks to do this, but god does it feel so satisfying when you pull off one. And this is not just limited to 2 enemies, you can do it to multiple enemies. But there really isn't much depth to explore different styles of play with this combat, which has always been a problem with Assassin's Creed to be honest, even more so with the games before the RPG era. It's a cool combat system, yet like most Ubisoft games, fails to reach its full potential in my opinion. Then we have the stealth, which is arguably one of the worst in the series in my opinion, and the main culprit of that is the detection system. The detection system is quite an overcorrection from Unity, with it being so lenient that I can kill someone 2 feet away and the enemy AI won't notice. It's to the point that it's almost comical. The amount of times I was able to narrowly escape detection in this game is far more than any other AC game, and it's such a shame because it really takes away what little challenge the stealth has. This is the problem with Ubisoft. Instead of making the system more balanced and fair than Unity, they dumb down the system completely. The AI in this game is so darn stupid that even a 4-year-old can outsmart them, which makes the stealth such a cakewalk that it just feels boring. Another annoying thing that happened with me doing stealth is that sometimes if the guards are in the state of seeing you and the detection bar isn't full, instead of assassinating the enemy, the game automatically puts you into combat, which is annoying and it could happen at the randomest of times. And sometimes the game just allows you to assassinate the enemy in that condition. Also, side note, whoever came up with the sneak button deserves to be rounded up and shot. The sneak button is probably the dumbest inclusion into the stealth because it looks way more suspicious if I'm bent over like I got a terrible case of hemorrhoids. It's really weird and could have been better if the character just puts on and off the hood when they're entering a restricted zone, and have a separate crouch button. There definitely could have been a better way to integrate this into the game. Then we have the social stealth. Now I appreciate that they attempted to make the social stealth a bit more interesting in this game, where you have a given radius within which you could be detected by the enemy regardless, and it only grows bigger the more you move around. So it encourages brisk and gentle movements, which is exactly how it should be. This is especially a challenge when you have to kidnap your target and escorting them through a heavily guarded area. Social stealth definitely feels like an upgrade from previous entries. It isn't perfect for sure and there's still a lot that could be improved, but I like that they attempted to do something new here. Other than that, the stealth is pretty standard in Syndicate with your average stealth tools that you have seen in the previous games. It's sad to think that the stealth really starts its downfall around this period and continues on till the RPG games, which is pretty crazy considering that the stealth was one of the major components that made this franchise. But at least there's good news that the black box assassinations from Unity are back. They are okay. I do like the idea of these missions. I feel like they certainly should have improved some things from Unity. Instead, it feels like it's more or less the same, where the game gives away all the opportunities for you to do instead of stumbling across them naturally. And for some of these missions, you really have no option but to engage with one of these to gain access to a certain area. Thus really restricting the way you approach these missions. I think the one mission that best handles this and is clearly built well for this open sandbox type experience was the Tower of London assassination, as I wasn't restricted to completing the opportunities to gain access and I could find my own way in and plan out my own strategy. This is still a problem with Mirage, a game that came out 8 years later, which I failed to mention in my video, but please make sure to go check out the video if you have the time. I sincerely hope for the future you come across these different opportunities naturally as opposed to the game telling you where they are. It just ruins whatever discovery and experimentation that the player can engage with. Now, side content wise, I'd say that Syndicate is definitely an improvement over Unity. With all sorts of side missions and activities available, I do like that this game takes a page out of AC Brotherhood's book by having to liberate districts from Stark's control, just like how it was with the Borgias. You have your gang strongholds, bounty hunts, associate activities, and much more to conquer London and taking back control from Stark. Although I would critique that each district you conquer doesn't really feel all that distinct from each other, whereas in Brotherhood it really felt like each district had a unique story to it, just to the environmental design, and it showed how each district is suffering differently under the Borgia's control. It also gave us a clear progression and a sense of progress when we were rebuilding Rome piece by piece as you see NPCs' behaviors change and the way of the mood of the district completely changes. But Syndicate unfortunately falls short of that, and it feels like repetitive side content and having no means of feeling genuine progress besides taking off side content on checkbox. Which is a shame. I see what they were trying to do with the side content, and I do appreciate that it's much more focused on its objective than the previous games. But instead of evolving on the system from Brotherhood, it feels like a shallow recreation. We also have the train hideout missions, which were quite nice. It added a bit more depth to the characters who help you in running the train. They seem pretty familiar to the Homestead missions and AC3. Although it's a shame that there really isn't much of an incentive of doing these, because unlike the Homestead missions, they don't really add any upgrades or progression to your train hideout, which is a big missed opportunity in my opinion. Even after doing the cafe theater missions in Unity, you still unlocked a cool new area of the hideout. I feel like this game takes cool parts of the other games but doesn't really do much to evolve them, and in fact it just makes them shallower. I wish there was much more thought put into the train hideout system, as it's a step down from what we got from the cafe theater in Unity. On top of that, you have your activities to take over each of the districts, which by completing you level up your loyalty with your allies in the game and unlock new rewards, which does give you a sense of personal progression in the game, yet I don't know why they couldn't implement this system to the train hideout missions. It's really bizarre that they decided to put this mechanic here instead of there. After completing all these activities, we conclude things with a gang war, where we eliminate the gang leader. You do have the opportunity to kill the gang leader before as they come to warn you, and doing that improves your odds of winning the war. I like that there's an option of doing that, but I kinda wish that the gang leaders had some sort of personality instead of being generic bad guy 1000. The game does a poor job of differentiating them, as even when you finally face them off in the gang war, they just fight like your normal enemies, which really undercuts their significance in the game, thus making this whole gang war thing kinda pointless really, as I don't really feel any intimidation or challenge from them. It's just another thing to do in a checkbox. I feel like instead of a gang war, they should have made it a smaller scale black box assassination style mission, where you track these leaders down, with each having unique opportunities or areas where you can really experiment with different ways of stealth. At least you can get more opportunities to do stealth in this game, even though it's broken. Other than that, there is Dreadful Crimes, which is basically the return of the murder mysteries from Unity. I like them there and I like them here too, and they certainly seem a lot more interesting and well designed. I also like the Charles Dickens mission, where you investigate the supernatural. These feel different from the other missions and you get a nice break from hunting down the Templars for once. You also have other associated missions and activities, and it's pretty crazy how much content there is to do in this game and how much variety there is, from testing your fighting skills in the arena to the activities related to taking over London. There probably hasn't been this much varied content to do in an AC game since Black Flag. The crafting and upgrades are pretty self-explanatory. You find items and schematics across the world or by completing activities and use them to craft new gear and upgrade them. I do like that there are more things that are craftable in this game instead of just being available to purchase, especially some of the best weapons, which does make crafting more useful, especially if you want higher quality weapons. I also like the outfit customization. Sure, it isn't as deep as Unity though, but I do like the selection of different colors and especially the capes that I can pick with Eevee. I also forgot to talk about the Rooks, our gang. You can recruit them to fight with you, but honestly, I mostly use them as a diversion. They really aren't as effective as the assassin recruits from the previous games in my opinion. We also have gang upgrades, which gives you access to a bunch of perks relating to the gang, which again didn't really mean much to me since I barely recruited the Rooks anyway. Some of these upgrades are useful, but all in all, I didn't feel any incentive to upgrade all of this. Now let's get to the narrative, which is a hit or miss for most people. I personally feel that way about the humor of this game. It's a mixed bag where sometimes it works and other times it feels pretty cringe and seems like they're trying too hard. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I don't really like Jacob that much. A lot of his jokes just don't land for me and just come across as cringe. And besides his goofy persona, there really isn't much depth to the character. He's just boiled down as comic relief, which is a shame because I do think he could have been interesting. You can have a character who's goofy but also be extremely well written and complex, which you can see with Nathan Drake from Uncharted. And they've already done this before with Ezio as well, even though Ezio is far from a goofball, but the point still stands. Like seriously, every time Jacob made an unfunny MCU level joke, I wanted to slam my head on the table. It also really made me miss Connor, man. Like seriously, I don't get the idea that a character has to be charming and witty all the time in order to be liked. Connor and Altair are the exact opposite in that instance, and they are far more compelling characters and generally well liked by the fanbase. Also a genuine question here. What is the point of playing as two characters in this game? Because they don't really offer anything new in terms of gameplay. Whatever Jacob does, Evie can as well. I feel like that really undermines the point of having two characters if they don't offer anything unique with their playstyle. What makes it worse is that both characters pretty much have the same skills you can unlock. There are only like 2 or 3 unique skills that the characters have. Rest are all the same. So why even bother switching to another besides some specific main missions? Which is why I played most of the game as Jacob, and I wanted to play as Evie, but I couldn't see why I must switch. It also doesn't help that the majority of the main assassination missions in the game are specific to Jacob only. They did address this criticism in Shadows and made the characters completely different in terms of playstyle, but I wish they thought of this thing earlier with this game. Another problem that I found with the game's writing is that it really likes to treat you as a little kid by spoon feeding you all the information, which is pretty self-explanatory, especially when a title card is dropped revealing the character's name, like it's some WWE entrance or something. They do this even with the historical characters. Now I know this might come across as nitpicky, but this is the reason why so much of this game's story is dumbed down. This is probably due to the rise in the number of casual fans, especially after the release of Black Flag, and the games just continue to do the same. It's really such a shame since a lot of the intrigue and mystique of this series is just gone due to appealing to the ape brain. Like, I don't know about you, but even a 12-year-old can figure out simple shit like a character name. You don't have to constantly remind me. And of course, this dumbing down of the writing to appeal to the mass audience also affects the way the Templar villains are written. They seem just like your stereotypical bad guys with extremely one-note personalities. Sadly, this has been a major problem with this franchise. Even the Ezio games struggle with this to some extent. It's only AC1, AC3 and AC4 that really give us the most thought-provoking, deeply nuanced and compelling villains in the series. The other games just don't even try to attempt it, mainly because Ubisoft wants to appeal more to its casual players. Another strange thing is that I don't know why they didn't go for the actual historical characters as villains for this game. Instead, AC Syndicate is really one of the few AC games that I can think of that is completely fictional made-up villains, and they are as generic sounding as their names. Now, the things I do appreciate about the story is that I like how it shows the aftermath of the assassinations. Where we see the assassins killing these targets didn't necessarily improve the situation of the common folk. We see that after the assassination of John Ellison, as there's no good medicine anymore in the market, after they halted the syrup production and all that's left is counterfeits. And you see Evie deal with these consequences. It serves as a critique of the creed and shows that assassins just kill targets and be on their way to the next, and don't really do much to rectify the problem. They hope that killing the Templars fixes everything, and as we see, it clearly doesn't. I do like the idea of this arc, but I wish it was explored further in the game. Also, Jacob would be lynched by the old assassins for all the actions he commits in the game. I'm pretty sure he already has broken the 3 tenets of the creed, and Evie does call him out for it, but unfortunately the game doesn't really do much to develop his character to be more considerate and aware of his actions. It would have made for a far more compelling arc and character development for him of growth and redemption, which would mirror that of what we saw from Altair in AC1. Alas, that's the problem with Ubisoft. They plant these cool seeds of ideas, but they're too afraid to explore them further, primarily because they're afraid of taking risks and losing the casual fanbase. They also set up this conflict between Jacob and Evie, but unfortunately the game didn't have enough time to explore this arc properly and it just resolved in a matter of a day. Again, cool concepts but ruined by poor execution. A thing that I find pretty ridiculous is that Jacob and Evie took over the whole of London underworld from Stark in just a span of a few months, whilst in Brotherhood, it took Ezio and his allies over 7 years to fully rid Rome of Borgia's influence. It's even more crazy since the Templars should be at their absolute height during this time of the game, yet the game makes it look like a walk in the park. Jacob and Evie never fail or waver, they always 100% achieve what they set out to do, and it just feels so boring. You lose the engagement in the story and the characters because of this, to be honest. I feel like it would have been better to spread out the game a bit over the course of a few years, and really focus on showing the struggles that the assassins faced during that time, so the story feels more palpable, because it's really hard to buy the fact that Jacob and Evie defeated and took over the most powerful stronghold of the Templars in just 6 to 7 months. It's also pretty unfortunate that the weaker storyline of this game in my opinion is the stuff with Evie looking for the shroud, which is a shame since I do like Evie far more than Jacob. Like, it feels like the devs really gave the bulk of the main missions to Jacob and later just created another campaign to give Evie something to do. My guess as to why they did this is because of the sexist attitudes of Ubisoft executives who thought women don't sell, and they probably told the team to reduce the role of Evie in the story. Ubisoft really are masters at self-sabotaging themselves. I do wish Evie was given a bit more importance in this game, and it's still pretty ridiculous to me that the majority of the main assassinations in the game can only be done by Jacob. One of the few missions of hers I did like was the mission at Edward Kenway's mansion, because I'm such a fucking simp for Edward and Black Flag in general. But it's sad that the better character of the two is given this awful treatment. I do like the finale mission of the game, One Last Dance at the Buckingham Palace, to end things. It's pretty cool as you dress up in disguise and infiltrate the palace and eliminate the Templars there. Although this mission is ruined by the awful final boss fight. Like, I don't know what they were thinking with this fight, it's very poorly designed. You just alternate between Jacob and Evie as Tarek keeps throwing you off the room only to make your way back and get a few more hits in. It's really repetitive and very predictable, to be honest, as this cycle is repeated at least 3 to 4 times. I mean, I know Assassin's Creed isn't the best when it comes to boss fights, but you could have at least put some effort here, Ubisoft. It really is quite a shame that this boss really let this final mission down for me, as I quite like the rest of the mission. And I think that's really all that I wanted to talk about in terms of narrative. Wait, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh wait, I almost forgot to mention that we also have the World War I mini-campaign with Evie's granddaughter Lydia Fry. Now look, as much as I like the idea of exploring World War I Britain and doing stuff there, I just think the integration of that in this game is really odd. Like, why does Juno drag us into this World War I world? Why not the main map to give us the messages? Because other than the big exposition info dump that Juno gives us, there's really no reason for this part of the game to exist. You're basically just hunting down Templar spies to help Winston Churchill, because we need to take part in World War I guys, cause why not, it's so epic and cool. It's also quite funny how most of the exposition that Juno gives us is already pretty well known by the long-time AC fans. So it's just a way to capture the newer fans' attention, I guess, because this is clearly for them to understand. And even then, all this information is of no use because we already know what became of Juno's storyline. It's really bizarre as to why they chose to do this. I get that World War I is a cool setting to have in an AC game, but you could have made a completely separate game for that, or even a separate DLC besides this half-assed mission you could do. And to make it worse, even the side content is pretty similar to what you can do in the base game besides the Zeppelin raid. So I don't know why this part exists besides padding out the game more. Overall though, I surprisingly had a fun time replaying this game and I didn't know it had this much content to offer. I might go as far as to say that it might be much more fun to play than Assassin's Creed Unity. Of course, the latter being a better Assassin's Creed game, but I feel like that's what Ubisoft Quebec really aims for. Making fun games for the casual players, and Assassin's Creed Syndicate clearly achieves that with its beautifully simulated world of Victorian London, fun side content, and to some extent, a decent combat system, though it does feel shallow after a while and it isn't perfect by any means. It's a shame that this game really took the brunt of Unity's failure, and I do think it deserved a better fate. That being said, the game suffers from a typical Ubisoft problem where a lot of the ideas that the game presents and the mechanics are pretty cool, yet not fully developed to reach their full potential. And it's a problem that still plagues Ubisoft games. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, like and subscribe if you did, and I hope you've had a wonderful Christmas and I wish you a very happy new year. Unfortunately, a lot of things got in the way in the past few months that I had to take care of, so that is why it took me longer than expected to make this video. But I do hope this year went well for you as it did for me, and I cannot wait to see where this channel takes me next year. So if you want to follow me on that journey, stay tuned. But anyways, I hope you guys have a great New Year's and I'll see you guys next year. I love you guys. Peace.